Keith Long, you're very welcome to the official Waterford FC podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on. Doing really well. Enjoying the Premier Division, life back in the Premier Division with the club. Enjoying my time down here in the southeast, and yeah, all good so far.
And we're getting into April now, so it'll, we'll finally see the sunny southeast for you.
Haven't seen a huge amount of it. I got to be brutally honest with you. I think up and down the country we've been absolutely battered with the amount of rainfall we've had. So yeah. Hopefully the weather will pick up like everything else, and you know, we're looking forward to maybe seeing some sort of sunshine here in the southeast.
Yeah. Look, we'll start at the present before we go backwards, I think. How are you finding life in the Premier Division? How are you enjoying now being back, I suppose, at the top table with Waterford?
Yeah, listen, of course, it was everybody's goal and ambition at the football club when I came in to get back into the Premier Division where we feel this club should be.
Yeah.
You know, really enjoying life in the Premier Division, of course. Bigger capacity, bigger crowds, bigger travelling away support in the RSC, creating that atmosphere that you need in games. Away, you know, all the games that we faced away, most of the games have been sellout crowds, so good atmospheres, better pitches, we stay in better hotels. You know, and that's ultimately where we want to be. Everybody's enjoying life back in the Premier Division. Our stated aim at the start of the year was to be competitive. It's a competitive league, and I think we've proven that we are more than capable on our day.
Definitely a positive start to the season. You know, even from a fan's perspective, it's enjoyable. You know, and as you said, more than competitive, I think.
Yeah. Some performances better than others. I think we started off the season against Shelbourne in a good manner. You know, the crowd on the night were fantastic. We gave them a performance that they could get behind. You know, Shells obviously have gone on to have a great start to the season. They're top of the table. Up until last week, we were the only team to have taken points off them. I thought we fully deserved that on the night. We followed that up with an away win in Drogheda, and some good displays, good performances in between. So yeah, positive start overall. Of course, you can look at some of the performances, some of the games, and you're picking out, you know, where we can improve, where we can get better, and that's the job of us, the coaching staff, to try and help the players and improve the players as we develop into the season.
Yeah, and look, we obviously go back to talking about the team and the club at the moment, you know, but I'd like to get into a bit about yourself, if you don't mind. And obviously, look, you started off as a player. Played at Stoke City, at Lone Town, Bowes, you know, Bray. Mm-hmm. What was it like, or I suppose, when was the moment you decided to make the transition from player to manager?
Well, listen, I suppose I didn't play for Athlone. I managed Athlone. Didn't quite play for them. I played for 3 teams in Ireland. 4 teams if you include my schoolboy club, which was St. Joseph Boys, and I have a great affinity with that football club. Having you know, got a lot of players into League of Ireland from that source, but you know, yeah, Stoke City played there for a few years, came back to Ireland, played for Dundalk, and then into Pats, and then finished up in Bray after a year away in Australia. So that's the playing career. Listen, I never really thought about coaching. I never really thought about managing. I think a lot of players that would have played with me in different dressing rooms may not have seen me as managerial material, manager material. But I suppose what happened was I done some badges in the UK while I was a player. I did enjoy that side of it, but parked it when I came back home. Concentrated on playing for Pats, Dundalk, and Bray. And towards the latter half of my 4 years at Bray, I started to look at the game in a slightly different way. I was obviously a more experienced player in the dressing room. Younger players coming to talk to you about advice, about different things about their game, their positions. I suppose because I had played in a number of different positions across the team, I was, you know, referred to as a utility player. If you know, maybe a player that filled squads, maybe a player that could play in a number of positions. I was able to see the game in a different way. From a tactical point of view, having played and had a reasonable understanding of the game from different from playing in different positions. And like I said, in the latter half of my career at Bray, when it was coming towards the end, you know, some of the younger players would come to me looking for advice, looking for opinion, creating different scenarios, and that gets you to think about the game from a tactical point of view. I went on to continue my coaching badges, you know, whilst I was still playing at Bray towards the end, and you know, I qualified myself. Found like lots of players, when you're coming towards the end of your career, that it was sort of a natural transition to become a coach. I really enjoyed that side of the game. I really enjoyed, you know, I suppose the energy in the room, bouncing off different coaches, different mentors, different coach educators, some of the tutors, like Noel O'Reilly, God rest him, you know, was a great tutor of mine in my early days, in the early badges. I would have played for Noel and Brian Kerr at St. Pat's. You know, Noel is a really real legend in terms of Irish football, and the help and the guidance that and the experience that he passed on, his knowledge of the game to coaches like me, and I'll be forever grateful for that. So it's thanks to people like him, thanks to people, you know, coach educators, coach tutors that encourage you to move on, to progress your career. Thanks to a friend of mine, Matt Britton, gave me an opportunity at Dalkey United, believe it or not. That was my first coaching gig. And, you know, from there, I was able to go back into Bray Wanderers with Eddie Gormley as manager, and I assisted Eddie with some good days in Bray at that time. We were very competitive in the Premier Division at that time, and it was a great learning experience. Eddie helped me in terms of my education, coach education, insofar as that he let me, you know, take the bulk of the sessions. I was on the grass a little bit more back then, you know, educating players like Dame Massey, Chris Shields, Gary McCabe, you know, Paddy Kavanagh, Dave Webster, you know, the list goes on. You know, we had so many good players that came through that club at that particular time, and I suppose that gave me huge scope, you know, to further grow, further learn, further develop as a coach, and you know, I loved it ever since those early days.
Yeah, and an excellent education as a coach, you know, and a great pedigree to go into a career as a head coach or manager, you know. Obviously, look, you were manager of Athlone for a very short time. Came in, you know, as a caretaker after Pat Devlin. But I would be remiss, obviously, to do an interview with you and not talk about Bose. You know, you were there for 8 years, I think. Would that be right?
7 years, 11 months.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'd call that 8 years, which is a lifetime, really, in the League of Ireland.
It is, yeah, and. So I loved every minute of my time at Bose. There was different phases at Bose. So initially, when you go in, you're firefighting. You know, up against the 12-team league, one of the smallest budgets in the league at that time, which was well recognised. The club had been to the wall, more or less, was probably, you know, maybe hours away from, you know, going out of existence.
Yeah.
Things were bad, you know. There was a lot of stability put in prior to me going in as well. So, like, you know, there was Owen Heary was there for a time. Aaron O'Callaghan was there for a time. The board that I entered into the club were there, and they were firefighting. They were putting building blocks in place. They were trying to stabilise the club and trying to ultimately keep the club going on a day-by-day basis. So when I went in there, it was purely, you know, remit was to keep them in the Premier Division. Thankfully, we were able to do that. Thankfully, from on the pitch point of view, we were able to stabilise things. We were competitive in a 12-team Premier Division, and we built upon some of the foundations that we laid in terms of bringing in young talent. I suppose, you know, my ideology at that point had been shaped at Bray Wanderers, you know, working with the likes of Eddie Wallace, and Eddie, rest in peace, as well, has since passed, you know, you know, again, I've had great mentors around me, great people to look up to and see how to operate and work properly. So Eddie would have educated me in terms of recruiting players and going to watch players and how to treat people and how to approach clubs and work and build relationships with schoolboy clubs, with other clubs, because League of Ireland clubs at that particular time had a bad reputation for just coming along and taking players out of schoolboy clubs, out of junior clubs. And there's a right and wrong way of doing that. And Eddie would have educated me at that particular point, Eddie Wallace, in terms of player recruitment. So we did all that at Bray. And we brought in tons of young players. We had a relationship with St. Joseph Boys. We built on that partnership, that relationship, so that we built that trust element between the club and St. Joseph's, Bray Wanderers and St. Joseph's. So that gave me the experience and I suppose the confidence to implement something similar at Bows. And we were able to do that with St. Kevin's. It was a long process to get Kevin's and Bohemians to partner. But for me, similar to Bray and St. Joseph's, Bows and Kevin's on the north side, was an ideal partnership at that particular moment and history for both clubs. Rude Doctor brought in, the philosophy that we wanted all the clubs to try and, be aligned, in terms of the calendar. So we integrated ourselves and into St. Kevin's in terms of looking at their best players, looking at the players that we felt could come in and help the first team and build a club. So we were able to do that. We were able to put some good people in place at underage level, looking after some of the younger teams, partner with Kevin's, but also other clubs. We're not just solely looking at players from Kevin's, but we were able to get the best players in from Dublin, making Bohemians the club of choice for young aspiring professional footballers in Dublin, putting them through the academy system, which was in its inception then, 17s, 19s, feeding into the first team. And also as well, tapping into some of the talent that was coming back from the UK, which was important. And because I had worked in a schoolboy capacity, which again was probably unusual at that particular time, I had a knowledge of the players. I knew who the international players were. I knew who the high potential players were. I knew the boys that were away in the UK, which gave me a bit of an advantage when they came back. It's no longer an advantage today because academy managers are widespread up and down the country. But back in the earlier days, at the inception of the academy system, I felt a head start on lots of the other League of Ireland managers. Number one, because I knew the players. Number two, I went to the games. I had was very, very hands-on in terms of the academy, in terms of the players. And ultimately what we wanted to do was get the best talent into Bohemians, to give them an opportunity and a platform to try and play football. And we were able to do that in tandem with bringing players through the underage system, through the academy system. So we had a twinfold sort of approach to I suppose player development and player pathways and all that type of stuff. So we were able to benefit from that because Bows was a big club in a big catchment area, good partnership with St. Kevin's. I had a good understanding in terms of international players going away to the UK, trying to attract them back. When Premiership clubs close the doors on you, it can be very hard for young players to get themselves going again. And because I had been in that position myself as a player, I was able to pass on that experience, maybe try and help the players, reignite their careers, give them a platform in the League of Ireland, playing competitive football at a good level. And we were able to build a club from that point of view in the earlier days at Bohemians.
Yeah, look, Bows definitely pride themselves as well on their identity, as a club, not just on the pitch as well. Like, what was it like, I suppose, overseeing, like going in there and they were, their financial problems at the time were obviously well documented now and where they've come from and all that kind of stuff. What was it like seeing like a club in the balance go to what it is now and the identity they have now with, like, Bows, I know, is now seen in Dublin as almost a night out. There's a massive following up there. There's fellas, finding League of Ireland for the first time, going to Bows, seeing it as an attraction. What was that like, the transition?
Well, I think, I suppose from a board level, and certainly, working with Daniel Lambert, who is obviously, is the operations COO at the club. Yeah. Daniel's philosophy is, from a football point of view, and he'd be quite radical in terms of his thinking, in terms of his approach. He gets an awful lot of grief from people that don't know his value and don't know what he brings to the football club. But I suppose what we wanted and what Daniel's, you know, one of his core principles at that time was that we wanted, you know, Bohemians on a Friday night to be an event, to be above a refereeing decision, to be above, you know, winning or losing a football match. That it's a place to come, that you're amongst your own. You know, it's part of a tribe where everybody comes together. They're with their friends, they're with their family, you know. And I suppose what Bohemians did in those days was reconnect with its community, you know. And what happened was, dovetailing with some of the relative success that we had on the football pitch, is that people could identify. You know, they could identify with the team on the pitch because they were prepared to roll up their sleeves, work their socks off, run through a brick wall for the jersey, for the club. And supporters identify with that. But also as well, reconnected with its community. Grandparents, grandfathers, fathers, sons, lads and dads, they all started to come back to watch their team play. And maybe, you know, that sort of the timing of all that seemed to dovetail, like I say, with some of the stuff that was going on in the on the pitch, embedding itself in the community. Bohemians, like I said, reconnected. It's a big club, boss. A big club, big catchment area, big working class area, and great people, and you can see my enthusiasm for the place.
That's
and it drips off me because I spent so long there, and I can see how much it meant to its people. You know, the club, and I think that's really, really important. And some of the stuff that Daniel did, along with others. You know, a lot of board members that put in work behind the scenes there really laid the foundations for where the club are now today. And yes, silverware is massively important. Of course it is. You get validation in terms of bringing back silverware to such a big club like Bohemians. And unfortunately, we were unable to do that in my time at the club. But I think there's a lot more positives than negatives over the period of 8 years when I was there. But one of the plus things for me was being involved in a club that meant something, that stood for something, that had, you know, that were committed to its community, embedded in the community, but also had that identity. And myself and Trevor Crowley, another coach, you know, brilliant coach, brilliant friend of mine, that's still involved in the football club. We had a sweet spot of probably 3 seasons where Friday night in Dublin, in League of Ireland circles, Dalglish was the place to be, and it was because of that connection on the pitch with the players and supporters could identify with each other, but also that reconnection in the community where you got supporters, generations of supporters coming back together to bring their sons, their grandsons, whatever the case may be, to give the next generation, you know, what they got, you know, growing up from their parents, from their dad.
Yeah, and look, I can see the passion you have for the club, which is perfectly understandable after spending so long there, and that's why it would have been completely remiss of me to do this podcast with you and not bring that up. But it also brings me to, you know, very recently, like for me personally, I have a lot of friends in Dublin. I spend a lot of time in Dublin. I work a lot in Dublin, and a lot of them are Bohs fans. So, you know, 2 Fridays ago was quite sweet for me to be up in Dalglish to win. How did it feel for you?
It was a great feeling. It was a great feeling to go there and win the game. Maybe there was a higher power at play. I don't know. I don't believe in you know, I believe in looking after performances, I believe in looking after results. But I suppose it was my first time back in the opposition dugout, which wasn't really the opposition dugout because that was the dugout I occupied for 8 years in Dalglish. So it felt like the home dugout for me. But anyway, I got a brilliant reception, you know, before, during, and after the game, half time from the Bohemians supporters, and you know, I won't forget that. That meant a lot to me. But in terms of the game, you have to put all those to one side. You have to put emotion to one side. And focus on the task in hand. We had a brilliant travelling away support that were right behind our dugout. Yeah. They never stopped from minute 1 to 90 plus, and that's my obligation. That was our responsibility, to go and reflect them in terms of performance, send them down the road happy.
I think I was there. I think the rest of the travelling fans will agree there was something special that night. It felt really special. It was for me personally, if I could be so bold as to bring it up, like it felt. I remember winning away at Cork in 2018, and that was a special result, and it felt that way for me and for a lot of the lads that were with me as well. No more so, I suppose, for yourself that you lost your assistant to Bose, a week before it.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that whole process like?
It was tough for Alan and for myself
Yeah.
because, lots of stuff going on in the background, so it can be difficult. And listen, we have to be a professional. We have to focus on our jobs. A lot of time for Rennie and what he given to Waterford in my spell here.
Yeah.
But you got to understand and respect his ambitions to be a manager, and it's a big football club, so you fully understand why he will be interested. So, in terms of performance, I was pleased with how we played. It was a team performance. It was an organised performance, but the result would mean nothing if we didn't follow it up with a back-to-back result against Galway. Unfortunately, we drew the game against Galway. So going to these places as a one-off can happen. You can throw a blanket over a lot of teams in this league. There's very, very little between a lot of the teams. So results like that can happen. We have to make sure that we're competitive. We have to make sure that we're consistent. We've got to make sure that we back up performances week on week, and we're digging out results. And listen, it was a strange sort of build up. I didn't really, if I'm being honest with you, because I had to focus on the job. I wasn't interested in anything else. I went into Dalymount Park. It's a great place to play football, and that's probably why the atmosphere that you generate in Dalymount. I always felt that if we can keep the crowd quiet, we're doing a good job. I think we did that for long spells in the game. We won the game 1-0. Could we have drawn or lost on another night? Maybe, but like I said, maybe there was a higher power at play. Yeah. And I was glad that, and with all the subplot, myself, Rennie, me going back to my old club, Rennie against his hometown club, it was nice to come out the right side of it. But they've gone on and won a couple of games since, so he's doing okay.
He is, and we wish him well, of course. Best of luck, Rennie. But Rennie's gone now. You have a new assistant.
I do.
Is that something you were looking at before? Is it someone you knew before? Will it be a more permanent thing, do you think? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Matt's come in and he's been really good. Different voice, different accent, different voice. He's from Blackpool in the UK. Listen, Matt is the ideal choice for us right now.
Okay.
And this is the reason why. I've been over and back to Fleetwood quite a number of times since we progressed against Cork City. And I've been watching sessions. I've been watching some of the coaches. I've been watching some of the stuff that goes on there. I've been building relationships. I've been having conversations, and I suppose ultimately there was a feeling that Rennie will go at some point.
Okay.
And not just the Bohemians. There was talks of maybe going back to Derry, all that type of stuff, which is natural enough. Talented people, there's always going to be speculation around, and natural enough. So I always had to have one eye on what's going to happen next, and part of the conversations that I had with Fleetwood, with Matt, would be, and they were sort of hypothetical conversations, but and a little bit aspirational in some sense, because Matt is a highly regarded coach within the Fleetwood. He manages the 21s with Fleetwood. He's taken the first team at Fleetwood. He's a highly regarded and respected coach within the club. When I asked about Matt, the potential of Matt coming to Waterford in January, it was unlikely. When I asked, and when the conversations went down a certain direction over the last number of weeks, that the potential of Matt coming to the club became real. And I'm only delighted to have him here. I think he'll add real value to what we're trying to do. He'll assist me. He'll help David Breen. He'll help Brian Murphy. He'll help some of the other coaches. And he's got lots of experience, in the professional game in the UK. Yeah. So why can't that experience be passed on to some of the players here in the league world? Yeah, that's great. So it's great to hear you had an eye on him since January then. Since before then, actually. Yeah. Really? Yeah, the conversations were going back. Yeah, going back before to, like I said, to the playoff game against Cork. Wow. Okay, I was in Fleetwood that weekend. Well, you got your man then. Eventually, yeah. That's great. Well, listen, the situation with Rennie led us down that. Do you know what I mean? But look, there was rumours for a long time. Yeah, of course there was. And by the way, when Rennie was with us, was first class. Yeah, of course. But look, you mentioned your time at Bowes, and obviously you were striving for silverware there. It didn't quite happen. But your short time here, relatively so far, you've already brought great joy. Last year, you mentioned it there yourself against Cork City when the playoff was won
What was that night like?
Oh, it was a great night. And again, it gives you a sense of the appetite for football in this county, you know, and what it means to the Blues supporters. I've always felt that Waterford, if I'm being brutally honest with you, when I was out of the job, in between jobs after leaving Bohemians, this was one of the clubs that, when you look at the ownership, when you look at the sort of, you know, they're trying to professionalise the game here. You look at Waterford, the facilities that they've got. You look at the history and tradition. You look at the support base, and you think, if you got this club right, you know, it could be a special little club. And I've always felt that, you know, and when myself and Rennie were appointed, Rennie obviously did the job on me, the sales pitch on me as well, because every time I've been here, you know, you go into the RSC, the dressing rooms are great. You go into the RSC and you look at the pitches out the back. You go to the arena, the Setu Arena. Like, these are the best facilities in the country. Yeah. So you got the tools to work here. You know, you've got the history, you got the tradition, you got the support base. You know, my job was hopefully get us promoted. We were able to do that, and now we have to be competitive. And the most important thing for this football club is stability. To build stability around the football club, that we don't bunny hop between divisions, or we're not seen as a yo-yo club. We got to make sure that, you know, we stay in this division and be as competitive as we possibly can, and that means we have to be on it in every game. So yeah, listen, I like I said, when I had my short spell out of the game, in between jobs, looking at jobs, Waterford would be one that excites you. Jonathan Waters was sporting director at the time. Obviously, the ownership, you know, they're football people. They're putting money into the football club. They're, you know, putting money where their mouth is. You can see the transformation around the place. You can see with Colin Power in the community, some of the stuff that they're doing there. You know, we're now putting our footprint into the community. That, again, something similar to Bo's, in a sense that Friday night's not about a result. Friday night is about a community coming together, being part of a tribe, coming to watch their team play, win, lose or draw, and that has to be, you know, our aspiration, to grow the club, you know, to sell commercially, to get more bums on seats, to get jerseys out there, you know. And I went on record last year saying this, like, we're looking at the whole sporting community in this county. It's not just the football community, the soccer community. We're looking at GAA people, looking at the hurling, because this is, you know, traditionally is a hurling county, isn't it? It's massive, it's huge, you know. And why can't the people that support the hurlers come and watch us on a Friday night and watch the hurlers on a Sunday afternoon? I don't see any contradiction or any conflict there. You know, maybe that's not the done thing, maybe that's not the said thing, but we should not be in competition with each other. You know, a Blues supporter can be watching the hurlers on a Sunday afternoon, and we wish them all the very best. Of course we do. It's a sporting mad town, city and county, you know, and part of that is the Blues, and you know, I would love us to thrive as a football club, and to grow the football club. And like I said, people come here on a Friday evening to be part of something. Yeah,
and I couldn't agree more with you. Like, for me personally, like, I think anyone shouting up the Dacia on a Sunday should be shouting up the Blues on a Friday, and that was part of the reason why, you know, when this opportunity came up to do this, and, you know, to host the lounge on a Friday night over there in the RSC like I do now as well, I absolutely jumped at the chance. Like, not only do I follow the team myself and have done, you know, since I was a teenager, but like, I think more people need to be getting on board what's happening, because it does feel very special at the moment. You know what I mean? It does feel special, Keith. It does, but we can't take anything for granted, and we can't rest on our laurels. We have to move forward all the time, and that's what we on the football pitch. That's our obligation, to try and make the team better, to try and help the team. Yeah. There's going to be times where we disappoint. There's going to be times where we don't play particularly well. There's going to be times where in the RSC we need the supporters, in spite of the performance on the pitch, in spite of maybe some of the things that they see, to really generate that atmosphere, to get behind the team. 0-0 on Friday against Galway. There's moments in the game where it's quiet, and I know there's a disconnect between the track and the stands, and sometimes it's hard to hear the supporters over the far stand away from where we are in the dugouts, but, you know, I get it. It's our obligation to perform, to get our supporters on the edge of the seat, but also as well, bang that drum,
you know, sing the songs, get behind the team, because it spurred them on, it'll help them.
It's ironic. You mentioned the facilities. You must have read my notes. I was going to bring that up. You've already done it, and now you've done the second thing again. I actually spoke to some of the lads I know that are in the Blue Supporters Club, and I could ask you from them. And actually, what they said to me was, "What would you ask from them?" I thought it was a really nice thing from them. They said, and I have it written down here, is there anything Keith needs from us? What can we give to Keith?
I tell you what I'd love to see. You know, we talk about culture, right? You know, I don't want us to be a nice football club. I don't want people to come here and have a nice experience. You know, I want people to absolutely hate coming to the RSC. So we got to create that atmosphere that intimidate people, you know, that, not in a bad way. You know, I got to use my language correctly, but it's hostile.
Yeah.
You know, it's vocal. You know, it's partisan. It's all right being vocal and partisan and hostile, you know, for your team. So make life really uncomfortable. Be as vocal as they possibly can. Be as colourful as we possibly can. And I need to get the PA sorted. We need to get proper music in the PA so that we come in and we're listening to a bit of the Stone Roses. We're listening to football culture. We're listening to, you know, proper football music, if you get me, culture.
Yeah.
Because it is a different culture, and that's what we need. And when I say I don't want us to be a nice provincial football club, don't want that. I want us to be, you know, a team, a club that people don't really like coming to. Yeah, the facilities are good, all that type of stuff, but they know they're getting a right hell of a time on the pitch, and they know the atmosphere from the home supporters is going to be rocking.
And you know what? It's there. It's there. Like, a lot of people do talk about the PA thing, and you know, you brought it up, but what it is, it's an athletic track PA. In the stadium, and it needs to be turned inwards, whether it's a second set of speakers or whatever. It needs to be turned inwards toward the stands, I think. But also, you mentioned the music, it is there. Like, I'm in the lounge, I'm hosting the hospitality lounge, and we're having great crack in there and all that, but I would love to see, like, there's live music in that lounge. I'd love to see that turned outwards when people leave the lounge, when people are walking into the ground. It should translate. I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
The music and everything, and
it all
lift
adds
it.
to
Because
the
it's
event.
there.
It all adds to the event. I don't know what Stone Roses song I heard coming out in Dalglish Park. It was one off their second album, Second Coming. But it's automatically, I think, you know, it's football.
Yeah.
It's Friday night, it's culture, and part of that is the music. And believe it or not, part of any event is the atmosphere. You know, obviously it's a huge part of it, and creating that could be just a case of getting the right tracks, the right PA system, feeding into the players, feeding into the crowd, you know, so you have that synergy. You know, there's something on it, you know, the big important games, you're playing Rovers at home, you know, or whatever the case may be, big clubs from Dublin coming down to us, that hey, listen, they know they're in for a game that it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah, and it, like I said it again, it's there. You know, you see it on the buses going to the away games, or even when if you drive up, you see it, the lads coming off the buses. Like you mentioned, the Stone Roses, even Oasis. You know, I think it might be I Want to Be Adored. Maybe is the song. I could be wrong. Is the one you're talking about, but like. Even the catchment area here, Keith, you know, where you did mention obviously the city here and the town surrounding it, but also there's people in Kilkenny that come down and watch, you
That's
know.
right, yeah.
There's people in South Tip who come down, you know, so there's huge scope. Listen, there's huge crowds in the RSC, but there's room, as you said, for even more growth, isn't there?
There is absolutely so, and we'd encourage that. That it's not just it's the southeast, isn't it? I know we got Wexford down the road and what have you, you know, but it is we want to get as many people bums on seats as we possibly can coming into the team, recognising what they see on the football pitch, honesty, effort. You know, I don't think that they're the fundamentals, the basics of the game. They see people caring. They see a team that cares. They see a team that plays for each other. That's what they want to see. But we need to drive that, and that's where we can get the next step. Like I said, don't be a provincial club, a nice club. When I say that, you know. With
I think we know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be at it. Let's create that match day experience where music and culture and football are sort of aligned a little bit, you know, because I think they all feed into each other. I think if we get that, yeah, you know, it's culture in the UK. You go to games in the UK, you know, it's Oasis, it's you know, it's whatever it is. It was Blur back in the day. It was Oasis, Stone Roses, whatever the case may be. The Smiths back in my day, you know, the best band ever. Yeah. The Smiths. Okay. But anyway, we won't go down that road.
No, that's all right. Opinions differ.
Opinions differ, but. Yeah, listen, it's all part of the experience for me.
It is, and look, it is really growing as a culture in Ireland. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about as well. Is we're seeing a kind of a rebound and a kind of a boom in the League of Ireland in general, around the country, it's getting more support than ever. It's on live TV again now. Virgin Media, my employers, and RTE as well, another channel we have here, show it. Like, what do you think is behind that?
I think a lot of clubs have got a lot of things right. They're putting lots of emphasis on embedding themselves in their community. That's what happens, and there is that reconnection. I know at St. Pat's, for example, they've had a rebirth. We play them on Friday. There'll be a big crowd there, and what happened for a long period there is that fellas that went to the game in their teens, in their early 20s, got married, had children, moved away from it, didn't go. It didn't become a ritual. It wasn't part of their social scene. It wasn't part of it was sort of, they go in isolation. Football now, or at least club football on a Friday night, it's consistent. People are going back to games, bringing their kids, whatever it might be, or reconnecting, like I said earlier, with their club, going back to meet old familiar faces, striking up those friendships again, being part of something again. And I think there's been a rebirth in that sense, that fellas are coming back, families are coming back to the game. We can't get enough families into the grounds because of the facilities and the infrastructure issues that we've got within the ground, and within lots of grounds up and down the country, and we're turning supporters away because the facilities aren't good enough and not big enough. And I suppose it comes down to clubs doing their business properly. It comes down to maybe having more teams involved in football clubs as well, so you have more of a community. So we've got an academy here, so we've got 5 teams in the academy, so there's more people interested in Waterford FC, and that doesn't always translate to coming to watch the first team play on a Friday night if your son's playing for under 14s or your daughter's playing for under 15s, whatever the case may be. But there's more activity around a football club. It's more than just a first team, and that's why it's so important that it's not dictated by your results, what you're doing, that you still have that solid fan base, those numbers that are going to come and get behind the team every week, irrespective of a result. And up and down the country, I think you've seen that clubs are doing their business properly, are embedded in their community properly. And I think the globalisation of football across the UK has turned a lot of people off the game in the UK, because they can't identify with those players, because not their fault necessarily. It's just, it's a complete polar universe, a parallel universe. They don't live in the same world as we do. Coming to watch their team on a Friday night, okay, they see Niall O'Keefe. Well, they might pass Niall O'Keefe in the street here, Dara Power. They can identify with it a little bit more readily. I'm not saying that they're turning off the Premier League, but I think the globalisation of football has left people a little bit sort of going, well, I don't recognise that, I can't identify with that, I'm going to go to my local club. And you see it across the pyramid in the UK as well.
I see it, and it's funny you should say that, because before the Bows game, I was actually over in Anfield with my dad. On the Thursday, we got the boat back and straight to Dalymount, and we were standing outside the turnstile. We go in, and Trent Alexander-Arnold was being shepherded in by, I think, 10 security guards with his hood up. And my dad doesn't really look at the players like he used to, And he turned around and he went, "What's this fella doing? There's no one even going near him. Just walk in the door." But he had 10 security guards around him, Whereas, I see my nephew loves the Blues. He's going to be 9 next month, right? And I see his face when he's in the shop and Niall O'Keefe walks in, or Podge, or Conor Patterson said hello to him in the bar the other night in the hospitality, and his face lights up, and that means as much, if not more, to him than it does if he saw Trent walking in.
And that's what a lot of clubs have done well. They've gone back into their communities. They've got a visible presence. They've got people working in full-time capacities on the ground to try and generate that interest, going into schools and having that local hero. It's always good to identify with that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It seems to me, Keith, that you have a long-term vision for the club, and see yourself here long term.
Well, I suppose you can't plan for the long term without having your short term in place, because I don't think I'd be here if we didn't get promoted. Maybe I would. Who knows? Because I was tasked with, and myself and Rennie were tasked with trying to get the club promoted, by hook or by crook, and we did it, and we did it well in the end. But you can't. Obviously, you've got a vision. and I've got strategy behind what I try and do. Recruitment is key to everything that you try and do. Getting good players in, getting good characters in, getting good staff in. It's so important that you build that cultural piece amongst your, and creating that sort of environment, your training ground environment, that dressing room culture, and that you've got lads that, are experienced, can go and play the game. Also young, hungry players. So I think we've got the balance okay. Of course, there's different bits and pieces so that you can look at to try and implement, but primarily I've got to focus on stability. I've got to balance that off a little bit. I've got some good young players here. I've got some players that people haven't seen yet, and they're really, really good players, and they haven't been given a chance. And I suppose I pride myself in terms of my outlook on the game, in terms of I've always given young players a chance. I've always felt that young players deserve a chance. Young players will give you energy, will help the team, will drive economic value as well, potentially. And, if you're selling players like a Romeo or whatever the case may be, Adam Quealy, that hasn't quite played in the first team as yet, Jason Healy, these are high potential young players. Callum Costello in the academy, some players that are bubbling under, and the good work that Mike and Sean Gagan are doing, and the other coaches in the academy. I do have a long-term vision, but without the short-term, without that mid-term, without getting your recruitment right and building the club, I suppose the long-term vision doesn't come into place. I want to make sure that this club is successful, and when I leave it, if and when I leave it, that it's in a healthy position on the pitch, healthy position off the pitch in terms of the playing, the staff, everything that we've got, that we've built towards, all the little small improvements, that only small minor improvements, because remember, a lot of the stuff is here already, like a lot of support within the football club already, some great people working here, and you know what, some brilliant people volunteer, some brilliant people around the club as well, that never short of support and encouragement, which is hugely invaluable for us. So we're on a little bit of a journey. I know that's a bit of a cliche. Where we end up, it's who knows, but it's a journey, it's a process, it's not a destination. We're working towards that. The outcome this season, our objective is to stay in the Premier Division, to be very, very stable, to be competitive. And I think we've proven that we are capable so far, but it's so early in the season. Nobody's getting too carried away from a footballing point of view. We know we've got lots of growth to go, lots of road yet to travel. But hopefully my vision for the football club is to try and get the club back into Europe. I'm not saying that's going to happen within the next 12 months. But that has to be our vision. It has to be to try and, can you be successful in a cup competition? Can you finish as high up the league as you possibly can? And like I said, you have to put the foundation blocks in place. I think we've started to do that. And hopefully we can build, upon some reasonable foundations.
Great. It's really good. I'd like to finish with some non-football questions, just to kind of make it a little bit different.
Okay.
My first one would be, how do you unwind away from all of this? Because I thought of that because I find it difficult. I do several different jobs and stuff like that within the creative field, I suppose, and I find it really difficult to switch off. I seem to always be doing it. So I got a dog recently to try and take myself away from it. What do you do away from the pitch and the training ground?
I don't have a huge amount of hobbies, to be honest with you. I don't think I unwind really. You're constantly consumed by the business of football. Less so here in terms of the organisational stuff off the field. Because there's good processes in place. There's good foundations, like I said, off the field. At the club already. But you're constantly consumed by team selection, by players, opposition. How you're going to play, what players to pick, what formation to play. It can be all consuming. It's difficult to switch off, but you do have to. I mean, you do have to be present when you're at home. You can't be a million miles away. Sometimes you are. Obviously, I've got a family. At the weekend, I would go and watch other sports. My youngest daughter plays GAA, so cool. I get a kick out of going to watch her play. A different sport, but she loves it.
Listen to the Smiths.
Yeah. Listen, I listen to podcasts. I listen to music. I do a lot of traveling in between, coming up and down. Listen to music, all that type of stuff. Listen, I've got a huge repertoire in terms of the music that I like. I love indie music. I love, like I said, the Smiths. I loved the culture around Manchester at that time with the Stone Roses. I loved the culture between Blur and the Stone Roses. Oasis. and Blur. I loved all that sort of nonsense that was going on back in the early 90s. Some great bands. I love some of the American music. Like the Band of Horses. I love the National. I love War on Drugs. I love lots of different genres of music. I love Irish music. I love traditional music. I love Lancome, which is a real brilliant Irish band, Ray D. Peace, and that all that type of stuff. So I love going to gigs. Yeah, I go to.
There you go. Very passionate about
music. A lot of gigs. Yeah, I'd go to nearly anything. I love Taylor Swift.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, I have to.
Yeah, well, you have a daughter. Yeah.
so they'll go see Taylor Swift in the summer. I love going. Yeah. So if you were asking me one thing. I don't go to games in the UK, a huge amount of games in the UK. I don't really watch a huge amount of football outside the League of Ireland football on the TV at home. I love going to gigs. I love a pint every now and again. So I think a pint of Guinness is okay.
Nice.
from time to time. So yeah, that's what I do.
Cool. And the last one then, it's a fairly standard one, but someone asked me to ask it, so I'm going to ask it. If you had to invite 5 people to dinner.
Oh my God, 5 people to dinner.
We'll say 3. We'll say 3.
Geez, 5's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have 5 friends.
No, I mean celebrities. People like. Yeah. If you had to.
I know. God, right. 5 celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
Who would I invite to dinner? How long do we have? How long do we have? I've got to think. Okay, so. I wouldn't be able to talk to him, but Kenny Dalglish will be my footballing hero and footballing idol. And I've been in Kenny's company quite a number of times, and I still find it hard to talk to him.
Why?
Because I idolise him. I completely in awe of Kenny Dalglish,
wow.
An absolute hero of mine.
Yeah.
Absolutely idolise everything that he did on the football pitch and how he conducted himself around the Hillsborough disaster and all that type of stuff. The visible effect that it had on him and his family, but how they handled themselves and how he led that club at that time took an enormous toll on him. But a brilliant footballer, a great manager, and I'm sure his conversation and banter will be really good, and he'll have lots of stories to tell. So from a footballing point of view,
Kenny,
it will be Kenny. If you're talking about, if I think about from a music point of view, maybe a Damen Dempsey around the table.
Damo,
I go to a lot of Damo's gigs and whatever else. I think Damo again would be good company.
Okay.
Wouldn't be short of a bar or two, and I think the drinks might be flowing.
Probably.
But Damien will be a good one to have at the dinner table. And I'm not really into movies or anything like that, but if you're looking at maybe a Morgan Freeman or somebody like that, I don't know. Yeah, an elder statesman again, or maybe I need to go a little bit younger. I don't know. I'm not mad into movies. Mm-hmm. I'm not mad into cinema or any of that type of stuff. So maybe Taylor Swift.
Definitely Taylor Swift, I think,
because listen, she'd have lots of stories to tell, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
that's great.
You got me on that because you should have prepped me on that one. And I would have been able
to
come
I prefer not
to.
to.
So Kenny, certainly from a footballing point of view. Alex Ferguson, Jesus, he'd go on. One of the greatest managers of all time. Morrissey, somebody like that around a table. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be an interesting round table, I think. Yeah.
Well, Roy Keane. There you go. There you go. We get Roy in.
Yeah.
So
brilliant.
Morrissey wrote a song about him, didn't he?
Did he?
Yeah, Roy's Keane.
Very good. I don't see the Smiths aren't for me. So.
Well, it was Morrissey. It wasn't the Smiths.
Oh, Morrissey on his own?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
I could be wrong. I stand corrected.
Well,
maybe you might play that in
there you go.
In the RSC.
In the RSC.
Yeah.
Keith, thanks so much. I really, really enjoyed this.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much, man.